When we talk about gender equality in the United States, there's this one statistic you see all the time. Women earn 79 cents for every dollar men make. And while that statistic is factually correct, there's a lot it doesn't tell you. It simply compares the median wages of men and women who work full-time. It doesn't tell you how the wage gap plays out for women with different educational levels or different ages who work in different fields. And you need that information if you want to start closing the wage gap.
Hourly wage, the pay gap is about 16%. By weekly take-home pay, it's between 18 and 19%. By annual earnings, it's around 21%. This 16 to 21% number just looks at all full-time workers. It doesn't account for differences in education or skills or experience or occupation. When you factor all that stuff in, the pay gap shrinks to somewhere between 4 and 8%, depending on who's doing the math. This is the so-called unexplained pay gap. That is, there is no economic explanation for it, and most nonpartisan analyses agree that this part of the pay gap is directly due to gender discrimination.
Women are concentrated in lower paying occupations, but to fully understand the issue, you have to look within occupations too. Back in 2009, 3 economists set out to understand the wage gap by following a group of MBA graduates from the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. They looked at thousands of men and women who graduated between 1990 and 2006. And their data showed that men had slightly higher salaries right out of the gate. 1 year out of business school, women were making an average salary of $115,000, while men earned $130,000. But 9 years out of business school, things looked really different. Men were earning an average salary of $400,000, while women were earning 60% less, $250,000 on average. The gap had widened considerably. But research suggests the gap doesn't stay that wide, that it shrinks as women enter middle age. This chart shows how the wage gap for college graduates changes as women age. The lower the line, the bigger the wage gap between men and women. If you look at women born in 1973, you can see the wage gap growing as they go from their mid-20s to their mid-30s. Better than previous generations, but heading in the same direction. Same thing for women born in 1968. The pay difference between men and women continues to grow as they move from their mid-30s to their mid-40s. And for women born in 1948, things started off the same. The gap widens as they get older, but then all of a sudden it starts shrinking. As women approach their 50s and 60s, the difference between men's and women's salaries actually gets smaller and smaller, which makes sense if you think about what often happens during a woman's 20s and 30s.
Studies that have tried to control for all these factors have shown that if you take a man and a woman, same experience, same education, same job, and compare their salaries, what you find is that women make about 98% of what men do. So that gender wage gap pretty much disappears. And in some jobs, women actually make more. Now, it might well be the case that women are being discriminated against or that sexism is a problem in the choices that women make. For example, girls are guided away from math classes and guided into other kinds of classes. It's also certainly the case that our expectations about women's roles versus caring for children in the household and men's roles about caring for children in the household are very different. And if we want to see women's pay more equal to men, what we need to do is convince more women to go into areas such as the sciences and mathematics and engineering, and we need to convince men to take more responsibility for children in the house. When those begin to even out, we'll see wages begin to even out as well. But in the meantime, whatever choices men and women make, the wages they're paid in the market will reflect the productivity associated with those choices and are not the result of discrimination.